This is the FEHERTY podcast presented by Farmers Insurance.
Thank you. Sup? Little different look here. Thank you for that warm welcome. Tonight's guest is Michael Strahan, and in honor of his appearance on my show, I'm wearing his clothes. See? Right? I know what you're thinking. Michael Strahan is 6'4" and has the physique of an Adonis. And I'm less than 6'4" with a physique that's less Adonis and more a donut. But that's all right, because I'm not wearing clothes from his closet, but rather from clothes from his clothing line. Pretty cool, eh? That works. You see, in addition to being a Hall of Fame football legend and an Emmy Award-winning television personality, Michael's got multiple businesses, including his own fashion line. Needless to say, for a man this busy, it was only appropriate to visit him in the city that never sleeps. Rather than driving a ball down the fairway, I'm driving a car through Manhattan to meet Michael Strahan. I'm heading down to Midtown in order to catch up with him right after he wraps up a busy morning of shooting for Good Morning America. Michael, thanks so much for joining me on the show.
No, you kidding me? This is part of my dream of being on the show with you.
I love guests with low standards. Yeah. You know, you've slammed your body into 300-pound linemen, and you work on a show that requires you to get up before some people actually go to bed. What do you rely on? I mean, myself, it's Adderall and a number of other chemical substances.
I rely on gratitude.
Yeah.
Gratitude. Because when I had to slam into the 300-pound guys, that I actually enjoyed.
Yeah.
I didn't like training camp. So I didn't like training camp where you have to do 2-a-days and you wake up the next morning and you have to put on these pads. They're still soggy and wet from the sweat from the day before. They're cold. You got to put them on. You got to stretch on wet grass, cold grass, and then you got to run into guys. That I did not like it.
Yeah.
But once I finished up my career, everything after that is gravy. So I go to work every day and I'm just happy because I got a job. I don't live with my parents. Like, I can really take care of myself. And it's all fun stuff. It's all fun stuff I get to do.
You were born in Houston, but you grew up on Army bases, right?
Grew up on Army bases. I'm born in Houston, grew up on an Army base in Maryland. Then I grew up at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, when I was 6 to 9. And my dad was the 82nd Airborne Division, master jumper, paratrooper. And
Tell
then we
him
moved to...
I said thank you.
I will. I will. 81, almost 82, still going strong. We moved to Germany when I was 9, back in 1981. And my parents were there for 19 years. So I grew up on bases all around the world, and it was incredible because it taught me that the world is a big place, just not the little community that I was born and grew up and never left.
Yeah.
I had a chance to see the world before I was even a teenager, and I think that was a blessing.
You were the youngest of 6?
Yeah.
How big were the other 5?
They're not as big as me now.
No.
So I get back at them now. But I was a baby, and I wasn't that big growing up, and I would follow around my brothers, and I was 13 years old. I'll never forget. I was 13. I'm running behind my brothers and their friends, and we're trying to climb a fence, and they kind of jump over it, and I'm struggling. And one of the friends, they called me Bob because that was my nickname, but I didn't know what it meant.
Bob?
Bob, yeah. And I'm like, okay. And then one of the friends said, you know why we call you Bob? I'm like, no. He goes, it stands for booty on back or big old butt. And I didn't realize, man. I was 13, I'm just eating. and so I kind of was a big boned kid. But when that happened growing up with brothers who teased me, it really upset me at first. I cried like a baby. But then it also taught me that I have to toughen up. You're going to be the little brother, you have to toughen up. And I think being the youngest of 6, it taught me to be tough.
Well, there's no crying in baseball, but apparently there's crying in football.
Boy, you did your research, didn't you? The first time I played football when I was 7 and 8 at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And when I was 7 years old, I cried the entire game. And I was a good player. I mean, I would make a play and I would but I'm not just talking about I'm talking about
snot flying?
Snot, tears, snot, everything. And they would pull me out the game. What's wrong? I'm like, nothing. I'm okay. You okay? Yeah, I'm fine. They put me back in. I make more plays. I cry more. I couldn't stand the attention. Now that I think back, I did not like parents clapping. I did not like anybody yelling my name. The attention just made me emotional and made me cry, and I was shy.
Were you introverted? Yeah.
Yeah, and I still am. People can't tell, but I am.
Yeah, no, I get it.
This is the original kickoff point of everything.
Can you explain the importance of a Kuwahara laser light bicycle?
I was 9 years old. I had a beat-up bike.
Right.
And somebody stole it. And I cried. Like, I cried when they stole the bike, and I wanted a new bike. And, of course, as a 9-year-old kid, you find the most expensive bike that you can find with the Kuwahara laser light. And the bike was super expensive. And my dad said, well, you know what? You earn half the money, and I'll come up with the other half. But it took me a few years, possibly, to raise the money. And I'll never forget handing my dad the money, like, here's half for the bike.
Yeah.
And he looked at me like, I didn't expect you to actually come up with it, because I wasn't expecting to come up with the other half. But he came up with the other half of the money, and I still have that bike to this day.
How much was it?
It was over $1,000. I want
What?
to say, yeah, back then it was almost $1,000 or more.
Wow.
Which was a lot of money. I could have bought a motorcycle, probably.
Yeah.
And I still have it to this day. It hangs on the wall in my man cave, because it's a reminder that if you want something, you have to work for it.
What are you going to do with it?
So my mom asked me at one point, because it was in their attic for years, and she's like, why don't you give it to your son? And I love my son more than anything, but he's not getting my bike. I'll buy him another bike. He can go buy his own bike. He's not getting that bike.
Pete, you're such a fine player.
Michael Strahan is fun and friendly, but whenever he stepped onto a football field, he became focused and ferocious.
Welcome home, baby.
He spent 15 seasons terrorizing NFL quarterbacks, accumulating 141 and a half sacks along the way. He finished his career with more hardware than a Home Depot, winning countless honors, including a Defensive Player of the Year trophy, a Super Bowl ring, and the gold blazer that comes with induction into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Quite impressive for a kid who entered the league after only playing football for 1 year of high school and 4 at tiny Texas Southern University. Where were you for your own NFL draft?
For my own NFL draft, I was sitting in my Uncle Art's living room, and we just watched it on TV. It wasn't the big fanfare it is now. I wish it was, but it wasn't. And as you're sitting there, we didn't have call waiting. So you're watching the draft, and people getting drafted, and the phone rings. They're like, oh, here's my chance. And you pick it up, and it's one of your buddies going, hey, how'd they pick him, man? They should have picked you. You're like, get off the phone. They could be calling now. But it was a nerve-wracking, stressful situation.
What were your first thoughts when you found out you were going to go to the Giants?
Why? They have Lawrence Taylor, who is the greatest defensive player ever in the history of my mind. And also, it's cold. I don't want to freeze, man. I don't want smoke to come out of my mouth. It's cold in New York.
What do these names have in common? John Copeland, Eric Curry, Dan Williams, Chris Slade, and Coleman Rudolph.
All guys picked ahead of me.
You know how many of them are in the Hall of Fame? Exactly. Well, the Giants had, like you said, Lawrence Taylor and some really star players when you joined them. What was your mindset, when you first went into the locker room?
It completely overwhelming. I'm walking in the locker room, I see Phil Simms, and he goes, hey, Michael. And I'm like, Phil Simms knows my name. Oh, my goodness. And then Lawrence Taylor, he didn't walk in. It was like he just did like that, and he just glided in like he was on one of those trams at the airport. The guy didn't have to move his legs. He was like a god. He was just floating into the room. So overwhelming, to say the least.
We see this sort of easy-going Michael on television. How does that differ from, when you were on the football field?
I think a lot of this is on the football field. A lot of the smiling is on the football field, but not when I was a younger player.
Were you a smiling assassin?
Later in my career, yes.
Yeah.
But as a younger player, no, because I believe you had to be mad to play. I would look at the guy who I thought I had to play, and I would look at his picture in the program, and I would go, oh, he said something bad about my mama. I'm trying to psych myself up. Oh, he did. But after trying to do that for a few years, I'm like, oh, this is exhausting. So I had to figure out another way to get myself excited to play. And then it just came down to loving to compete. I love to compete. So we could have this conversation right here on the bench during the game. I have my helmet down there, and they'll go, defense. I go, all right, hold on 1 second, I'll be right back. Pick it up, put my helmet on, and then it's a different thing. It's more of a focus.
Right.
Now, and I can smile at you, but it's kind of like a lion looking at you where you could tell there's no concern or love for you in their eyes.
Yeah.
It was that helmet made me go, hey, how you doing, man? How's your wife? I don't really care about you right now, but I'm going to handle you. Then the second I take it off when we get done, I'll put it out and we can continue our conversation. So you just had to have switches, a different level to your personality to be able to compete at that level, but also stay calm.
At the end of the 2000 season, you make it to the Super Bowl. How exciting was that?
That was one of the best feelings of my life. We were a team that wasn't expected to do much in the playoffs, and we beat the Minnesota Vikings 41-0. It was just an amazing accomplishment by the entire team. Best feeling in the world.
How disappointing was it to lose?
Worst feeling in the world.
Was it?
When you lose a Super Bowl, you wonder, was it even worth making it in the first place? If we had to come this far just to lose, but then you think about it, at least I had a chance at the end. But it was disappointing in the way we lost and the margin in which we lost with. But when I look back on it now, it was a blessing to lose then. Because I just don't think I would have continued my career as long as I did. I don't know if I would have had a lot of the same motivations that I did. It just seemed to work out perfectly. But to lose, it was devastating. It was just completely devastating.
When you started, one of your career goals was to break LT's sack record.
Being around long enough to break LT's record was, that was kind of like icing on the cake. And that was the thing on a personal front I was most proud of in my NFL career because he was my idol. Like there was no other defensive player. I used to watch the videos in college. We used to go out here like a bunch of crazy dogs and have some fun. I mean, there was nobody like LT.
He was like the Tasmanian devil.
He was like the Tasmanian devil.
Yeah.
And I had a chance to play with this man and learn from this man and to have him there on the sideline when I broke the record against the Eagles was like, wow, full circle of life, and so without even knowing that was a goal, but then to accomplish it was beyond anything I ever imagined.
Golf's a funny game. Tell me a funny story about golf.
I was playing in Pennsylvania when I used to live out in the Poconos, and I'm hit a bad drive, and I'm so mad, and I throw my club, but it didn't go where I wanted. It kind of went here behind the fence until this tree that had all these crazy vines and it got stuck in the tree.
Did you have to throw a provisional?
Well, the crazy thing is there was no way to get to my club.
No way?
So every day, I played the course a lot. Every time I played that course, I had to look at my driver, which to this day, I'm like, never throw a club.
Is it still there?
Yeah, it's still there. That was God's lesson to me, that do not ever throw a club, son, because you will be humbled. But it's still there.
Thank you. Because he hadn't played much organized football, Michael Strahan arrived in the NFL with raw athletic talent, unencumbered with bad habits. He was clay waiting to be molded, which made him a coach's dream. That is, until he ran into a coach who epitomized his worst nightmare. Let's say I just injected you with truth serum. How much did you hate Tom Coughlin when he came to coach the Giants?
Beyond anything I can tell you.
Really?
I'll never forget my first meeting with him. And he gives me a notebook. And he said, I want you to write down everything that I'm going to say to you. And I was going on a trip, and he knew I was leaving. And he said, and then when you're on this plane ride, I want you to read this over and over again and think about it. And I had the notebook, and I'm just writing down BS, BS, BS. I'm just writing BS, 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 BS. And I left the meeting. I said to myself after that, I got to play this year with this guy because I'm under contract. And after that, I'm done. I can't play with this guy. I will not play for this guy for more than 1 year. And I hated him. I don't think no one didn't. He was a tyrant. Mm-hmm. And then one day we had a big blow up for several reasons. One, he fined me $500 for being 3 minutes early instead of 5 minutes early. So we're going to practice, and I pull him aside, and I say, hey, Coach, I got a letter for a fine for $500 for being late, but I wasn't late. He goes, yes, you were. I said, Coach, I wasn't late. I was 3 minutes early. He said, well, you're late. don't cut it so close next time. I'm not cutting it close. 8 o'clock is 8 o'clock. He finally says to me, he goes, well, be lucky, it could have been more.